Everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar hosted by AARP Colorado. We're thrilled to have you as we delve into a fascinating and complex discussion about the journey of aging. AARP Colorado focuses specifically on issues around livable communities, health security, and family caregiving. AARP is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that empowers people to choose how they live and as they age. Today's webinar is really an effort to support people with knowledge as they plan for how they want to live and age. There's so many factors that shape the experience, some within our control, others not. I'm gonna to there I'm sorry. In our age-denying society, many people delay planning for the inevitable until forced to do so. Instead of waiting for a crisis, we are much better served by being proactive about our aging process. So today we're going to chat about that, and we're honored to have with us Jane Barton. Jane is a passionate non-speaker or national speaker, a writer, and listener. She has a wealth of information, and she's going to introduce herself in more detail soon. So please join me in welcoming Jane Barton.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it. And once I get my screen up and running, if you can mute all, that would be great, so we don't have any background noises. So yay, I'm so excited to be here. I am so appreciative of the support of AARP Colorado and the invitation to present this webinar. I always love tag teaming with Jessica and the rest of the gang at the Colorado State Office. We've had an ongoing relationship now. It started in 2011. It's hard to believe. So we've covered a lot of ground, but there's more ground to be covered as well. So again, my heartfelt thanks to everyone in the state office. And certainly I want to send a big virtual hug to all of you that have opted to share a bit of the journey with me today. I'm always humbled and honored and somewhat surprised when people show up to my programs. And hopefully you will hear something of benefit today. And you'll leave thinking, hey, this was worth my time and attention. So just a reminder, if your mute button is not on, if you would do so, I would greatly appreciate that. Now, I would imagine there are people in the room, quote unquote, today that are new to me. So a little thumbnail sketch so you understand who I am and what I'm about. Obviously, my name is Jane Barton. My company is Cardinal LLC, and I serve as an educational consultant, which means I get to do what I love every single day. I serve as a speaker, a writer, and/or a listener, and I focus on the topics that I'm passionate about. That includes aging, end-of-life care, and caregiving. I have a background in hospice and palliative care. I started serving as a chaplain in 2004, and I moved into the directorship of education for a palliative care institute here in Denver, Colorado, and I served in that capacity for a number of years. Prior to that, I was in finance for a few years, and before that, I had a 16-year career in the oil business. I worked as a geologist. So a rather curious career path, to say the very least. But the motivation for what I do today really is rooted in my personal story. I was called to care for my mom when I was 15. She was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer, and that proved to be the formative event of my life. I learned over the 8.5 years that my family and I cared for my mom that knowledge is power, and without it, life can be pretty darn scary. So when I speak and when I write today, I focus on you, the audience. And I wonder what information, what resources, what insights might be beneficial to you and afford you the opportunity when challenged by life, you can make an informed decision instead of merely reacting out of fear, because that never serves us well. And so that continues to be my mission today as we talk about the journey of aging. Now, I'm very gratified at the number of people who signed up for this webinar, because this is somewhat of a countercultural conversation we're having today. We live in an age-denying, death-averse society, which ultimately doesn't serve us well. Because when we are afraid of something, when we deny the reality of life, we are less inclined to intentionally plan for this journey. And so I hope today you will find this discussion motivating, perhaps even inspiring, and pushing you toward a posture in which, instead of just letting life happen, hoping that all will be well, you choose to have a little bit of skin in the game. You lean into this aging journey. You become more proactive. And it's not to say you control everything, but let's invest ourselves in this planning process so that we can truly enjoy our lived experience and hopefully exit by a design of our own choosing. So today we're going to chat about these 4 things. First, I'm going to explain the motivation for the programming today. What prompted me to create this particular program? Then we'll consider the concepts of lifespan versus health span, maybe a term you haven't heard before. I will give you an example of how to live well and be well and age well by examining the blue zones scattered throughout the world and how aging unfolds in those communities. And we'll conclude by looking at steps to live well, age well, and ultimately to end well, to conclude the journey well. So let's begin with a question. What led me to focus on how we age and ultimately how we exit, how we die? Well, it has a lot to do with the people that have crossed my path over the last few years and the stories that I've had the privilege to listen to. In fact, over the last year, I heard far too many heartbreaking stories, stories that were conveying to me and reflecting to me the complications associated with the frailties of aging, how we ultimately declined physically and cognitively. Some of the stories were rooted in a medical turning point for a particular person or an entire family system. A change in health changes everything. It's a game changer, not only for the person with the diagnosis, but for everyone who knows and loves them. There's a tremendous ripple effect, and life is forever changed after that moment in time. So, whether it's the frailties of aging, a gradual decline, or perhaps a sudden decline, it's a shattering experience for those involved. And when we find ourselves in those moments, there's a massive amount of grief that wells up in us because so much has been lost in that moment. We're also anticipating future losses. And perhaps we have a tremendous amount of regret associated with what just happened. What could I have done differently? What should I have been doing to avoid this train wreck? Also, we have an anticipation that life will unfold in ways we never imagined and we don't want. Maybe our long held dreams are no longer possible and we see them fading away. And from many of these stories, I heard the heartache that healthcare is not living up to our expectations when we need those services the most, or people don't know how to access the best care possible, or even what constitutes the best care at that moment in time. Now, that's whether we're in an acute setting, in a hospital setting, long-term care communities, maybe trying to access hospice and palliative care, or even care in the home, whether it's medical or non-medical. There is so much frustration out there. And when people are anxious and emotional and fearful after a significant diagnosis, they don't have the time or the energy to do the needed legwork, to do the research, to find the resources that they need. I've also heard many a story from individuals who felt ill prepared and ill equipped to make some morally distressing decisions related to medical care. That has a lot to do with all of the options afforded to us here in the United States. Within our healthcare system, our doctors can do so much. But oftentimes, the question that bubbles up is, should they? Is this going to lead to a better lived experience? Will this ultimately help me or my loved one? And if we're not trained clinicians, if we haven't studied this, if we don't understand the language, and if we don't understand the consequences potentially of the choices that we're making, we don't know what the right thing is to do. Now, what we need to recognize in those moments, usually there is no one right answer. We are choosing between competing goods. Option A, B, and C, they have pros and they have cons. They're blessings and burdens. So, how do we choose in that moment? And so, again, in those stories, I recognize that oftentimes information is lacking far too often. Sometimes because we don't have time to gather it, we don't even know what questions to ask. And so we make choices that may not serve us well. So, again, circumstances and the choices that emanate from that may lead to an unwanted ending, a conclusion not of our design. So that's my motivation for speaking to you today about the journey of aging and how we can do this a little bit better. Because I heard of so many bleak endings from friends, from colleagues that have been coming to my programs for over a decade. I feel like they're my friends. And it absolutely wore on my heart and my soul. And I thought, I've got to speak to this more intentionally. I want to motivate all of us, and I'm speaking to myself as well. We need to be more involved. We need to be more proactive. And it's not, again, that we can control everything that happens, but we need to do the best that we can. Because if we don't, there is so much to bear, things that will weight us back and hold us down. So, because of all these stories, witnessing and listening oftentimes is difficult. My heart is heavy and my head is spinning, thinking of ways to improve the process. So let's do this together. How can we transform the experience of aging so it's not quite as frightening? It's not as arduous. It's an experience we're willing to discuss. We don't have to be age denying. Aging is not necessarily bad. In fact, it can be really exciting when you consider the possibilities. So I hope we can move forward in a more hopeful posture and start planning. If we are to transform our lived experience, the experience of aging, we must prepare for this journey just like we would for another trip we might take. I imagine all of you had spent an inordinate amount of time maybe mapping out an adventure you're taking to Canada, or if you're traveling to Europe, you're going to the West Coast to visit a son or a daughter. You do a little research. You get online. Maybe you even work with a travel agent, an expert. But you want to make sure that when you go to the places you want to see, you enjoy the activities that will bring you joy. You're going to have a plan in place. Well, let's do that for aging. And that will include an exit strategy because endings matter. And part of the journey of aging is that there is a beginning when you're born and there is an ending when you die. And we can't ignore that ending because endings do make a difference. Now, in order to map this out, to plan this journey of aging, we have to have an understanding of the process. So, kind of aging 101. So, first, when we think about getting older, what's the goal? What are you focused on? What do you hope to achieve? Is it quantity, as far as the number of years that you live, or is it all about quality, the kind of life, the experiences that you can enjoy day in and day out? Well, if you're like most people in the United States, in our society, up until this point in time, the predominant focal point has been around lifespan. Lifespan is the number of years someone lives from birth until death. And so it's all about quantity. Now, this information, if you're interested in perusing it a little bit more intentionally, you can refer to the Fortune article published in 2023. And there is a bibliography that is included in the handout associated with this program. And as Jessica noted during the introductions, she will send that to you tomorrow associated with the video link for this programming as well. So lifespan, the focal point is all about quantity. How long will I live? But there's a lot of chatter now about a different concept. And it's related to lifespan, but it's focused on a different aspect of living. This is referred to as health span. This is the number of years someone is healthy without chronic and debilitating disease. So the goal for this concept is the quality of life, to have a high quality of life. Now, while lifespan is certainly an important measure of health and well-being, it's not the only one. Health span is increasingly being recognized as an important concept because it emphasizes the importance of not only living a long life, but also living a healthy and a productive life. So lifespan and health span have a relationship. And the way I envision it is in this way. Lifespan and health span are related by the fact that we have a lovely quality of life until something changes medically. And then there's an abrupt ending as we learn to live with a chronic, progressive, sometimes terminal condition. And we will, in this gap between health and lifespan, this is the time in which caregiving becomes part of our day-to-day existence. So it affects not only the person with the diagnosis, but associated family members who are called to care. And then that gap continues until life ends. And this gap statistically, again, noted in the Fortune article published in 2023, is about 10 years. That's a significant amount of time, a decade, in which oftentimes we are struggling to access the best care possible, figuring out how to care for each other. And so for me, what I would love to see is expanding the health span and kind of closing the gap between health and lifespan, having a high quality of life for as long as possible. So how can we lengthen that time? How can we lengthen our health span? Well, let's consider the definition of health offered by the World Health Organization, again noted in the Fortune article of 2023. They have a more expansive view of health. They describe it as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So health is not just about keeping disease at bay for as long as possible, focusing on our physical wellness, but we need to be attentive to all dimensions of our health. So cognitive well-being, emotional, social, psychological, spiritual, even financial and environmental. So the goal of this journey that we're on, it's to age well by being well in all facets and dimensions of our being. And the key to aging well is our chosen lifestyle. Now, this was actually reported in an article published in 1998. Seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? And predicated on this research project, the conclusions of the researchers were these. They said, you know, we have some genetic components that we can't change, but that only contributes to 30% of how we age. 70% of how we age directly correlates to our chosen lifestyle, what we choose to eat, if we choose to exercise, how much sleep we get, if we have a robust social support system, do we engage in preventative health care? So the good news about this is that those are things we can control. So we hope to make wise choices, right? And the sooner we adopt healthy habits, the better. In fact, there was another research program that I looked at, this was probably about 10 years ago. And based on the results of that particular study, it said if adolescents were to adopt healthy lifestyles in their teens, they could reduce the risk of developing a chronic disease later in life by 80%. So the sooner, the better, right? So we should all be an advocate for ourselves and for our family members, our friends, our clients, our colleagues, to live well and to be well, to make smart choices. And recognize it's never too late for a course correction. So today, if you're sitting there, if you're of a similar age as I am, maybe I'm 67. So if you're in your 60s or 70s, you may be thinking, well, honey, that ship has sailed. It's never too late. Because I, as a 67-year-old woman, I could live into my late 80s. I could live into my 90s. And I want the next 20 or 30 years to be the best they can be. So if I need to kind of polish some edges, if I need to maybe revamp my diet, get a little bit more sleep, put a few miles on my tennies every day, that could pave the way for a higher quality of life and extend that health span that I'm seeking to achieve. So today, if you're wondering which way to go, how can I achieve that ultimate result that I desire? Let me share some recent research on aging. I don't want you to take my word for it because I don't profess to be an expert in the field. I learned from the best in the business. So I want to share with you some recently published books that you might want to check. You might want to go to the library, download them, or maybe even purchase them online. But they are eye-opening. The first one I want to share with you is a book written by Dr. Sanjay Gupta entitled Keep Sharp. It was published in 2021. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Sanjay Gupta. He's all over PBS. He is interviewed quite often on a variety of different news channels, but he is a neuroscientist. He may actually be a neurosurgeon, I believe. But his book is focused on brain health, and he is adamant about this. He thinks we are making great strides in our country about being more proactive about our physical health. But we kind of leave it up to the fates when it comes to our brain health. He wants us to be much more intentional about that. And he describes 5 pillars that will lead to better brain health. And I'm going to cover these quickly. The first, if we are to remain cognitively well, is to keep moving, to stay physically active. And so when you think about exercise, I don't want you to furrow your brow and kind of pucker your lips and think, oh, I don't want to exercise more. Well, exercise comes in a variety of forms, doesn't it? Perhaps you enjoy dancing. That's exercise. You're moving. Maybe you like to play golf. Well, instead of renting a cart, why don't you walk 18 holes? If you like to walk every day, I'm a huge walker. I get 25 to 30,000 steps in every day. I'm marching around my neighborhood at all hours of the day and night. But it keeps me moving and it serves me well. This is important because the same areas of the brain responsible for cognitive thinking tasks are activated and developed during physical activity and exercise, meaning when the body is in motion, the brain comes to life. Now, you may not have recognized this consciously before, but we've all probably experienced that runner's high when we exercise. That's because we generate endorphins when we exercise. Those are natural pain relievers. And we change the chemistry of the brain when we exercise. We generate serotonin, which is a mood elevator. So emotionally and mentally, we feel better. So there are a lot of benefits if you keep moving. The second pillar to brain health is to know your why, to have a sense of meaning and purpose. Now, this is very reflective of the work offered by Viktor Frankl in the mid-20th century. You may be familiar with his classic book, A Man's Search for Meaning. Now, if you've not read this book, put it at the top of your list. It's my all-time favorite. It's his memoir of having survived 3.5 years of imprisonment in Auschwitz. He was a neurologist, also a psychiatrist of the 20th century. And the premise of his work is this, that meaning is the driving force for humanity. And if we have a why to our existence, we can tolerate anyhow. He was echoing the sentiments of a 19th century existential philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche. Now, Mark Twain talks about the importance of why in this way. The 2 most important days of your life, the day you're born and the day you figure out why. So why you are here and what you are about, knowing the answers to those questions leads to better brain health. A third pillar is sleep. Now, Dr. Gupta spends a lot of time in his book talking about the importance of sleep because he thinks it's underestimated. And that's reflected by the fact the majority of people in the United States are sleep deprived. According to this doctor, we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep every single day. I can't remember the last time I had 9 hours of sleep. There are too many things going on, and evidently it's not serving me well. The quality and amount of sleep you get has an astonishing impact on you. Your body does not momentarily press the pause button during sleep. It's more like a reset button because sleep is a necessary phase of regeneration, and that's physically as well as cognitively. The fourth pillar is good nutrition, and that's probably not a big surprise to any of us. We need to eat well to be well. And the good news is that a heart healthy diet is also a brain healthy diet. So you don't have to choose between two different regimens that may be offered by your physician. And then the fifth pillar offered by Dr. Gupta is this: social connectedness. He recognizes that we truly are better together. Now, if you're interested in social communities and social support, there is a wealth of information that has been recently published about the loneliness epidemic. In fact, our current U.S. Surgeon General, this is one of the major initiatives of his office. Vivek Murthy has published a book entitled Together. I believe that was back in 2021. But if you go to his website for the U.S. Surgeon General, you can also download two recent white papers that talk about how he is working to mitigate the chronic loneliness that is pervasive, not only in the United States, but also globally. Now, why is this so important? Because chronic loneliness is now viewed as a health risk factor, equal in its significance to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, being overweight, being lethargic, having high blood pressure and high cholesterol. There are measurable consequences to being disconnected from other people. We as human beings, we are relational creatures. As John Cacioppo noted in his book Loneliness, published in 2009, he said, we are inherently gregarious. We can't help it. We want to be together, and we truly are better together. So let us be grateful to people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom. So when we are in relationship with each other, when we are caring for and being cared by others, we can thrive. We can truly flourish in this life. Now, there are other researchers that are also diving into other aspects of aging, such as Daniel Levitin. He published his book, Successful Aging, in 2020, and it's a marvelous read. I highly recommend it. And he talks about ways of increasing this health span, living a life not encumbered, not confronted by some of the changes prompted by a chronic or debilitating condition. And he said the way to achieve that is, again, he's echoing what Gupta has already taught us: diet, exercise, sleep, social support. He throws in attitude, so that makes a significant difference. And also, again, having a sense of significance, having something to do, having a purpose. Louise Aronson, who is a well-known gerontologist, published Elderhood in 2019, and she dials into the conversation. She speaks of physical wellness, psychological wellness, engagement, meaning and purpose and attitude if we are to age well and be well. Peter Attia, another physician, published in 2023 his book, Outlive. And he focuses on how we need a different mindset related to aging, because aging offers different challenges now. It's known statistically that 80% of persons over the age of 65 will be dealing with at least one chronic condition and will ultimately die of complications associated with that. That's a very different experience of the end of life as opposed to someone who grew up in the early 1900s. That scenario is you would motor along until you had an acute illness, and death would occur rather rapidly in a matter of days, perhaps weeks. For us, the decline may be a period of months or even years. And so we have to have a different approach to aging, recognizing that chronic disease will be part of that proposition. And so he highlights the importance of prevention, to do things to keep that diagnosis at bay for as long as possible, so again, to extend our health span. So he presents different strategies to achieve that. Again, I'm singing the same chorus: exercise, diet, sleep, emotional health, and he also discusses the benefit of some drugs and supplements that you can add to your strategies. And then there's Becca Levy out of Brigham Young University, and she published Breaking the Age Code in 2022. And her focus is somewhat different, but certainly related to all of these other researchers. She emphasizes that what we choose to believe about aging has measurable consequences. She's talking about our attitude, our relationship toward this concept of aging. So it's important to recognize whether you have a positive perspective of getting older or a negative one, because her data, she interprets it. This is the summary of all her work. Persons with a positive view of aging statistically live 7.5 years longer than those who have a negative attitude toward aging. That should wake us up. That should get our attention. And I would hope transform our societal attitude of age denial. It's not all bad. If we have a better relationship with this journey, it's going to serve us well. So the bottom line for Becca Levy is attitude is everything. Isn't that true with so many things in life? So from all of these researchers, did you notice some common threads? Yeah. Exercise, diet, attitude, social connectedness, preventative health care. So perhaps there are some foundational truths about aging, things that we can leverage, things that we can incorporate in our day-to-day existence so we can choose a lifestyle that will allow us to age well and be well. So could these strategies increase our health span and lifespan? I think so. And it's not just theoretical. I want to share with you some actual examples scattered throughout the world. I want you to consider the research conducted by Dan Buettner. Now, you may be familiar with his name. He's been affiliated with National Geographic for decades, and he's been conducting research in the blue zones. And these are communities scattered throughout the globe in which community members typically live to 100+ years, and they live an extraordinarily high quality of life as well. Now, I came across a documentary that Buettner published the end of 2023, and I viewed it on Netflix. By now, it may be on some other streaming services, but I know you can find it on Netflix. It's entitled Live to 100, The Secrets of the Blue Zones. And this is a captivating documentary. It will prompt you to think and ponder and wonder, and perhaps change your approach to how you choose to live. And in this documentary, he covers the 5 geographic areas identified with greater health span and lifespan, the blue zones. And the list includes Icaria, Greece, Loma Linda, California, Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, and Nicola, Costa Rica. Now, in this documentary, it shows Buettner traveling to each of these locations and chatting with a variety of community members. And he wants to know the secret to living not only a long life, but a good life. And the people he interviews, they will just grab your heart and soul and also your imagination. Now, in these various videos, I think it's a 4-part series, after years of exploration, Buettner says, I've discovered the secrets of living a long and good life. And the first secret he shares, which is probably not surprising after everything we've discussed to this point, he said, is to move naturally. In all 5 communities, people were in constant motion. And so this isn't just about having an exercise regimen, it's a way of life. It's instead of relying on convenient gadgets and machines, we ourselves do the work. So people in the blue zones, they do things by hand. So he was speaking to a woman in Sardinia, Italy, and instead of using a pasta machine or a bread machine, she was kneading the dough. Now, I'm a baker and I love to make bread. And I love the process of kneading dough. And if you make a lot of bread in one day, that's a workout. You are expending energy, you are using muscles. But it's not just about baking. It also goes to the point in many of these communities, they chop their own firewood. That's a physical activity. And certainly in these communities, people walk everywhere. They don't rely on transportation in cars or buses or public systems that are available. And some of these communities are smaller, so it makes more sense. But they get out and about, and walking is a wonderful way to move. He was interviewing the same woman who was making bread and pasta that morning in one of the videos. This was in Sardinia, and that community is built on the side of a cliff, basically. And the roads throughout that little village, they're very steep. And so she gets to a point in the interview, she says, "Oh, I'll have to finish talking to you later. I need to go to church. I need to go to mass." So she's taking off her apron, and Buettner says, well, how are you getting there? She said, "Well, I'm walking." And he said, "Where is your church?" So she leads him out the door and she points up the hill and she said, "Well, it's at the top of the hill." Now, this woman was in her mid 90s. And he said, "How many times a day do you do this?" And she goes, "Oh, I go to mass twice a day. I've done it my entire life." And off she went. And that was a significant climb for anyone. But at 95, she didn't think twice about it. Away she went. It's a way of life. It's not just something on the to-do list to check off. Also, in many of these blue zones, gardening, people grow their own produce. So this is physically challenging, but it's also stress reducing. If you love your gardens, you know there's nothing quite like digging in the dirt, whether it's flowers or whether it's for produce. But then again, this is a way of life. It affords an opportunity to move naturally. Now, the second secret to the blue zones that Buettner reports is having a positive attitude, and that's not about rose-colored glasses. It's being realistically optimistic and also having a worldview that serves you well, that feeds your soul, that is not diminishing. Now, how do we look out on the world and maintain that? Well, he shares with us in these communities that people manage stress differently in these communities than elsewhere in the world. That's very true for the United States. Far too many of us are chronically stressed. That does not serve us well because that leads to a myriad of medical implications. But routinely de-stressing, and by that I mean daily, that seems to be a key factor of living longer and living better. And what was shown throughout this documentary is that at the end of every day, family and friends would come together. They would gather around the kitchen table, maybe share a glass of wine, and they would just talk about their day. So if something went awry, everybody discussed it. You would process it, and then you would move on. It's not something that you would stuff and keep internalized where it would build up, potentially becoming a damaging event. So routinely de-stressing certainly affects attitude and worldview. And in all of these communities, spiritual and religious practices of all shapes and sizes serve them well, a guiding light, particularly during problematic and challenging times. Whatever your faith tradition is, whatever you choose to believe in, the practices that support and sustain you during the difficult times, knowing you're never truly alone, that goes a long way to shaping and honing and reinforcing a more positive perspective and attitude related to life. And certainly under this heading of having a secret sauce to the ability to live longer and to live better, it goes back to the why of your life. The Japanese term for this is ikigai, and loosely translated, it means a reason to be. If you have this, you are doing well. You have a reason to get up every day. And the ikigai lies at the intersection of what you love, your passion, what the world needs, the void that you can fill, the service that you can offer, what you can be paid for, your occupation, and what you're good at, your vocation. And when you discover that intersection, there is no better feeling in the world because you feel as if you are exactly where you are meant to be, doing exactly what you are called to do. Now, the third secret that Buettner discovered in all of his conversations with folks in the Blue Zone, again, revolves around diet. And people eat wisely. And most of these communities, in fact, all of them, they eat a plant-based diet, some up to 95%. I don't know about you, but that certainly is a higher percentage than I currently consume. And I eat a lot of veggies and a lot of fruit. But you add to the plant-based diet a little bit of protein, some nuts, sometimes some supplements, whatever it might be. But this is a very different diet if you compare to the current diets of most people in the United States. We have supersized fries, foods of convenience. We have high sugar, high carbs, and high oils in most of our food. So this would be a major change for a lot of people in our country today. Now, under this whole idea about eating well and eating wisely, wine is certainly included in a lot of these communities, with the exception of Loma Linda. But it's not every night you pound a bottle or two of wine. It may be a glass or two. And sometimes that's during the time when you are de-stressing, when you're chatting around the dining room table, whatever it might be. Another key to the Blue Zones is moderation in eating. In fact, there's a tradition in Okinawa that as a child, you're taught to eat until you're 80% full. You don't eat until you're overly full. And so there is less of a problem of obesity and having to restrict diets as you get older because you have this pattern of behavior. When you sit down, you satiate your appetite. I'm hungry, but you don't overeat. So moderation is a key. And the secret sauce, at least according to Buettner, what he discovered in the Blue Zones, is social connectedness. This is the key to living longer and living better. Connections and community. And in all these communities, family is first. You're raised in your family of origin, and then as you are an adult, you can have a committed relationship and you start your own family. You have your own children. And then you extend beyond the familial connections to your society, your community, your neighborhood. And in Okinawa, there is a tradition of moai, and perhaps you've heard of these groups before. I love this concept, and I would love to recreate it in my own community. But a moai is comprised of usually around 4 to 7 individuals, kiddos around 4 or 5 years of age. They're introduced to each other, and in that moai, they are expected to be lifelong companions. And in this community, most people, they stay where they're born. They stay in that community. So just think, in Okinawa, the expectation is you're going to live well into your 90s, maybe past 100. You meet your moai at the age of 4 or 5. As you approach the end of your life, you have known these individuals for 95 years. They know you inside and out because moais gather at least once a week, sometimes more often. And they help with the ups and downs, the twists and turns, the vagaries of life. They are your courageous, committed companions. What a community to rely on. What a community to contribute to. So I hope by sharing just a little bit about what I teased out from Live to 100, you'll be inclined to view this. Now, again, it may be on Netflix. I'm sure it's there. It could be on some other streaming services as well. And I hope that you'll choose to watch this 4-part series with other people, with your family and friends. I watched it with my housemate. And I tell you, we binged it one afternoon. It was during a winter snowstorm. And it led to the most fascinating conversations. It was delightful and it was inspiring. So Live to 100, it's engaging and potentially life-changing. You just never know. So the last point I want to address before we conclude and perhaps have time for some questions, What are the steps required to increase health span and lifespan, and ultimately make sure that you can age well and be well? Well, you need to recognize your starting point. Where are you today? How are you doing really in all facets of your being? Not just your physical health, but cognitively, socially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, and environmentally. How are you really? Now, I know some aspects of your life you may be in great shape. You may think, I'm really buff. I'm doing great in this dimension of life. And that's fabulous. But you may discover there are other aspects of your being that need a little bit of spit and polish. There's always room for improvement, right? So the first step is to identify your top priority. What is it you want to improve on? What do you want to work on? Then invest yourself in the process of improvement. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's a step by step process. And remember, to live well and to age well, it requires overall well being. It goes back to the definition of health as offered to us and described by the World Health Organization. It's more than keeping disease at bay. Yes, we need to focus on our physical health, and we've talked about that extensively today, but also consider your cognitive health, your emotional and mental health, your financial health, social health, staying connected, environmental health, spiritual health, and last but not least, your vocational health, your reason to be. We need to pay attention and invest ourselves in polishing the edges and improving the process within all of these dimensions if we are to be well and age well. Now, with that little cheerleading session done, saying we need to be proactive and we can do better and we can improve the process, I'm also a realist. We have to embrace the reality that this journey will end. Regardless of how proactive I am, regardless of how much spit and polish I put on the various dimensions of my life, I will at some point in time die. That is the reality of being human. And that is nothing to be feared. That is an expectation that we should embrace. And in fact, according to many a philosopher, the only reason that life has meaning is because it is limited. There is an end to this experience, which makes each and every moment that much more precious. So we need to be intentional about living each and every day and planning for that ultimate ending. Now, something may spark your decline, maybe an accident, or it may be a gradual decline, what many of my nursing friends call the dwindles. There's no major diagnosis, but gradually this biological shell is going to let us down. Either way, I encourage you to intentionally design an exit plan. And this is not being morbid. This is my desire to have some control at the end of my life. I love to be in control. I don't know about you. But when I imagine my ending, what I'm thinking about is, where do I want to be? I want to be home. Who do I want with me? I want the people I love the most. And I want my critters on my bed. I want to have my own blankets, my own pillows. I have certain music I want playing. And so I'm very descriptive and articulate about how I choose to exit. And having that plan in mind, it gives me great comfort. And it's not something that I keep hidden in the deep recesses of my soul. I share it with those who will be responsible for my care. So once you have that preferred vision in your head and in your heart, share it with your family, your friends, and your doctors, because they will be companioning you, and we're all going to need some help. They will facilitate your exit and hopefully honor your wishes, but they're not clairvoyant. If you don't paint the picture for them, they won't know how to assist you. I know this can be a very difficult conversation, but once it's done, there is a tremendous amount of relief on your part, as well as those who will be responsible for your care. So take the time to understand what you prefer, create the plan, convey that plan to those who will be responsible for your care. That will pave the way for a smooth exit. Now, how you choose to exit, it matters. It matters so much. And certainly it matters for you, how you will leave this world. But I think even more importantly, it matters to your family, those who are with you at the time of your death. They're witnessing that ending, and it will affect them from that day forward, for better or for worse. So, what do you want them to see? What do you want them to witness? So, consider this: the time and the effort expended in the beginning of your journey, in the preparation for your birth. I'm sure your parents spent an inordinate amount of time planning and plotting, doing things, arranging a room, painting, buying furniture and clothes, dreaming of a life for you. That took a lot of time and effort. That was the beginning of your experience of life. That's one side of the equation. Now think about the other bookend, the moment when you transition out of this life. Shouldn't we invest the same time and attention for that particular transition? Isn't it worthy of that? Doesn't the transition at the end of life warrant the same preparation and planning? And won't it serve you equally as well? In my humble opinion, the answer to that question is yes, it will. So I hope you can overcome your fear and trepidation about confronting the reality of your mortality. I hope you can become countercultural and learn to speak of death as part of your lived experience. Because to age well and end well, planning is mandatory. Do not leave it up to the fates. Do not become a story that breaks my heart like the ones I've heard over the past 2 or 3 years. Your ending, my ending, it matters. So retain the authorship of your story. Pen the ending of your choice. Now, I always like to conclude my programs with a heartfelt ritual, which really is just an opportunity for me to say one more thing. And I hope that you will consider what has been described as a good ending by a gentleman who used to live in Aspen, Colorado. And his name was Hunter Thompson. And his good ending was described in this way: life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." Now, that was Thompson's vision of a good ending. My closing question to you: what is yours? I think that's a question worthy of your consideration. So just to note a few other resources that you might want to check out related to this whole journey of aging. You can always go to my website, cardinallife.com. I have videos, blogs, and podcasts posted. And if you choose to come to another event that I offer in the future, you can click on the events tab. All of my programs, I'll say 99% of them, are virtual, so it matters not where you live. And they are free of charge because I have great sponsors like AARP. So click on the events tab. If you see a topic that tickles your fancy, there is usually a link there. You can register or just send me an email and I will sign you up. My podcast, Cardinal Musings with Jane Barton, you can access through my website or download through Spotify or Apple. They're usually 20 or 25 minutes in length. And more than anything, I want to thank you for your time and attention today. And I hope you heard something of benefit, or at least something that causes you to ponder more intentionally your journey of aging. Know that I'm sending you many blessings on your journey. And if I can ever be of help to you or yours, don't hesitate to drop me an email at cardinallife@msn.com. I'm happy to share resources, happy to respond to any questions you might have. I always enjoy conversing with those who come to my programs. So with that said, I'm going to unshare my screen and talk to Jessica and see if we've got any questions in the chat. Or if you want to unmute, if you want to post something verbally, I'm happy to respond to that as well.
Thank you, Jane. That was wonderful. Folks, feel free to put some questions in the chat or come off mute. And the handout resource I've plugged into the chat, I can do that one more time as well. Make sure you take this with you. It has the listings of all of the books that Jane was mentioning throughout her presentation.
We have a quiet group today. I see my friend from Florida, Ted. How are you, my friend?
All right. Well, with that, you can always get a hold of Jane if there's individual questions you'd like to ask her. And also note that we have Jane coming back again for another webinar next month on well-being. So please register for that and join us. We'll hope to see you next month.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody,
everyone.
for coming. Blessings.